Hi, welcome to the Bible Nation podcast. I'm Dr. Doug Levesque from Emmanuel Baptist Church in Corona, Michigan, and we're glad to have you at BibleNation.org. What are we standing up for? The ability, the freedom to do what's right as God defines that right.
God's the ultimate author of liberty.
We don't want government to stand between us and our freedom to do what is right.
We're going to do something a little bit different here today on the podcast. Normally, Pastor Georges and I have a discussion over some aspect of the news, some aspect of culture, because we believe that the Bible speaks to culture and that a Bible culture is the most important thing. But today we're going to talk about, and especially in light of the events that are going on in the Middle East, we're going to talk about some prophecy. Now, I have preached at an annual prophecy conference here at the church every year for over 20 years. And from that time, I have hypothesized that the feasts of Jehovah in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, are actually not just days to celebrate, they're actually prophecies. They're promises. They're appointments. The feasts of Jehovah in the Hebrew are called the Moedim of Jehovah. That is, the appointments of Jehovah. God is promising that he will have appointments with man. And so these particular days are meant to come on some year in the future, but at the prescribed time of the feast. So the first coming of Christ did not coincidentally fall on the spring festival days of Passover. They were exact fulfillments of God's prophecies, not circumstantial backdrops to Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. As this hypothesis became more known and discussed, so did the scriptural idea that the particular day counts from Daniel and Revelation might fit exactly between the feast days, therefore creating a double matrix, if you will, and X marks the spot of how the end times event might unfold. The numbers have never worked out exactly until now. I've tried for years past, and I forecasted into years future, and somehow this year it works. Starting in 2024, an amazing and perfect alignment of both feasts and the day counts fits perfectly to the day. So feast, day counts, and the Antichrist quotient. That's what we want to talk to you about today. In this slide, we see that the Feast of the Lord in Leviticus 23, particularly the ones in the spring, the Passover festival, if you will, were fulfilled exactly to the day on the crucifixion, then being in the tomb, and then being the resurrection. And these three feasts were fulfilled exactly. 50 days later, exactly. On Pentecost, the Holy Spirit's appointment with the church was fulfilled. So that leaves the last day's events to be fulfilled, presumably also exactly on the yet as yet unfulfilled fall feasts of trumpets, atonement, and tabernacles. These fall feasts have by dispensationalists been taught for over 100 years, the days that would fulfill the second coming of Christ and all the events connected with it. So two other feasts are also endorsed outside of Leviticus and are also to be included in the promised and assumed appointments yet to be fulfilled. They are Purim and dedication. How might these be played out by the Lord? And that's what we want to discuss. On the slide, we're talking about how it says here the spring feasts have been fulfilled, Pentecost has been fulfilled, but the fall feasts have yet to be fulfilled. So it makes sense that the Feast of Trumpets would fit the idea of rapture, and that's the hypothesis I've been making through the years. All four New Testament rapture passages include the sound or the blowing of trumpets. So it makes sense that then, while Atonement, the Feast of Atonement, is over a week after trumpets, that Daniel's 70th week of years, or 7 years, could pass between these two feast days. Atonement then would be the second coming of Christ. Then it figures that the Feast of Tabernacles would represent Jesus on earth setting up the millennial reign. And of course, we are reigning with him at that time. So this slide shows how those last day fall feasts would line up with these particular events. Now, this is not something that's new to me. If you go back to all of Larkin's books with those famous end times dispensational charts, over and over he talks about the Feast of Leviticus and the fall feasts and the Tabernacles Festival, and even trumpets as being a picture of these events. So while they're not new, they're just little known. Even dispensationalists like to say, we don't conjecture and we don't talk about that, even though there's nothing wrong with conjecture. We're looking and waiting and watching and hoping. The Bible says we're loving his appearing, and so it's okay to talk about it. So now we also then take those hypotheses, the prophecies of the fall feasts being the second coming of Christ, and we take that and then link that with the two sets of day counts that we see in the Bible. In our slide, we see that Daniel has the day counts of 1,290 days plus 1,335 days, which of course is more than 84 months. It's more than 7 years by, 3.5 months. But it incorporates a 7-year period, so there doesn't have to be a contradiction there. And then in Revelation, of course, we see the 42 months, 3.5 year, 1,260-day matrix as being exactly, put those two together, exactly 84 months and 7 years, or the 7-year tribulation period. So there's definitely a correlation between those two. So I think these day counts should fit somewhere exactly to the day between the feast days. So this supposed matrix of time imposed through future prophecy, it has to be exact, all of it, in order to have merit. Otherwise, I'm just talking about disparate events. And really, that's over the last 20 years, that's what I've been talking about. I've been talking about the feast days and the day counts and the Antichrist quotient and geopolitical events and the Temple Mount. And all these things have been things that are related, but they're disjointed until now. And that's why I'm doing this special video, to show you to the day connection between these feasts as we go forward in the future. Now this fits, not every year, not last year, not next year, but it fits this year. So from trumpets of this year, October 2nd of 2024, to Passover, April 14th, 2028, is exactly 1,290 days to the day. Wow, I propose that this is the rapture to the midpoint of the tribulation, when the Antichrist will sit in the Temple Mount on a Passover as a replacement for the Lamb. What blasphemy. He'll make himself God, institute the mark, and the number 666 will be imposed at this time. From that exact same date, April 14th, 2028, 1,260 days forward lands exactly on September 26th, the Day of Atonement, 2031. So this is uncanny that you have two dates exactly, but there's more. We get to the second coming in Armageddon from the midpoint to Passover, but if you take that same midpoint day and you go forward 335 days from Daniel, it lands exactly on December 10th, 2031, the Feast of Dedication. Yes, the millennial kingdom reign from Jerusalem. This may be the coronation of Jesus as prophet, priest, and king at a new millennial temple. Wow! That is 4 feasts and 3 exact day counts. Amazing. It doesn't work any other time but this year, but there's one more possible 1,260-day count to mention. If we go from April 18th, or the Feast of First Fruits within the Passover festival, then you project backwards in time 1,260 days, and we land exactly on November 5th, 2024. That's right, Election Day, USA. Doesn't always seem that it would go together, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So that brings in the Antichrist quotient, right? The mystery of iniquity. Many say that the calendars are mixed up and we cannot speculate. The enemy has tried to change the times and seasons with some success, and he has. In Daniel's day, they were arguing over calendars, right? You had an Akkadian, Babylonian calendar, and you had a Hebrew historical calendar of Moses. And today the Jews argue over that calendar and say that it could be 3 different calendars. Since the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found the Essenes calendar, the Qumran Dead Sea calendar, and it proposes counting exactly from equinoxes, like the first mention of a date in Exodus. So all of these have merit and all of these have argument. Of course, then we have the Chinese calendar and the Babylonian calendar. You can even say the Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, and even since we've had the United States, there's been arguments over particular dates and particular calendars and how they're counted out. But nevertheless, today, all around the world, people are using the same calendar, especially thanks to the internet. So Daniel's told to when asking about the preciseness of these day counts. When shall these things be? He's told to close up the book until the time of the end, when knowledge shall increase and men shall travel to and fro. Presumably, Daniel could not possibly calculate then a matrix of dates that would be spread out over 7 years, thousands of years in the future, after multiple calendar fiascos, before America was a reality or important, and before the Constitution was written, which would say that our election would be on the first Tuesday in November every 4 years, or presidential election year. And we don't even calculate that, but we do this year, and it lands on November 5th, 2024. And how could Daniel know that that would be the beginning date of anything, let alone the start of Daniel's own 70th week of tribulation, or the start of the 7-year tribulation period? This is a reconstituted Israel that would be absent from Jerusalem at least twice and gone for thousands of years to boot. Nobody could know that a Nimrod-like revived Babylon and Roman-like empire would install a man to power who would 1,260 days later be possessed of the devil, sit on the Temple Mount, and declare himself God. So now we have all these disparate ideas that I know I've been studying and preaching with anticipation and hope for decades now. And I'm excited to bring this special podcast to you because all these dates work exactly to the day. And so I feel like I should share this, and you can do what you want with the information. And so let's go over to the whiteboard, and I have what we call the timeline, the famous timeline. And I've put these events in a way that most people can see them and understand them. Most dispensationalists use this timeline as a kind of event calculator. But here I'm going to actually put in not just the events, but I'm going to put in the proposed feast and then the day count between the feasts. And you'll see that matrix is an incalculable odds for being true. It's not something that I could make up. It's not something that really anybody could make up except for God. He saw it. And so the dates fall as he said they would. So let's go over here and look at that. First of all, we are here at the end of the church age. Most people agree with that. Jesus called it the beginning of sorrows, right? Wars and rumors of wars. We seem to be in that now. Then we also know that we're in the days of Noah. People are they're eating and drinking, they're buying and selling, they're giving and taking in marriage. They're just going along until what? Until that day. There's a precise day until the time, the fullness of time, right, comes, and then all these things happen like a flood. It was the same for Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember, Abraham was privy before Sodom and Gomorrah. So was Lot, actually. So it wasn't that they didn't know. They were watching and waiting and faithful and praying, and they knew. Noah was told to get on the ark 1 week before it actually happened. And so he was not only told to build this thing, but he was told exactly when it was going to happen. Simeon was looking for the first coming of the Lord, and he actually held baby Jesus in his arms because he was there on that day, the precise day, and which most people think was during the Passover, after the lamb was built, 8 days after, and showing himself pure. And that Simeon was looking for such a thing, and he said, now I can die because I've seen the salvation of Israel. And so it's not that we're not supposed to look. We're supposed to live holy every day, but this is definitely an anticipation. Why would God give us these feast appointments? Why would God give us these day counts? And so from October 2nd of this year, and by the way, Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets, is the only one of the feasts on a new moon, which means it has to be witnessed. And the Jews celebrated over 2 days so as not to fail to celebrate it, because 2 witnesses had to see the thing and testify of the thing. Isn't that interesting? We have 2 witnesses coming at this time in the future prophetically to witness of Jesus. And so here we have the Feast of Trumpets happening between October 2nd and October 4th. It's actually a 48-hour period. The Jews call it Yoma Arikta, 1 long day. But that's a very unique thing. When Jesus said, no man knows the day or the hour, I think he was talking about this kind of matrix. And so if you go forward from this day, which I propose, could this be the rapture day? That if you go forward exactly 1,290 days, like Daniel was told, you land on April 14th, 2028, 3.5 years later, during the Feast of Passover. This is Crucifixion Day, to the day. And I'm proposing is the midpoint, the abomination of desolation, when the Antichrist declares himself God, imposes the mark in 666, and the Bible says now we're in the Great Tribulation, a time of Jacob's trouble as never seen before, 3.5 years where God is finishing. and pouring out the vials of judgment from Revelation. So that's amazing that that's 1,290 days exactly as Daniel said. Now, again, the rapture doesn't have to be the actual beginning of the tribulation. It just has to happen before the tribulation. And so the 1,290 days and 1,260 days aren't in competition with each other. They're not in conflict with one another. They're overlapping truths that help bring us to the hidden day. And so there we have it. Now, here's what's amazing. From this same day, April 14th, 2028, that midpoint day, if you go forward 1,335 days, remember Daniel, 1290 and 1335, blessed is he who comes to the 1,335 days, the Bible says. We land exactly to the day on December 10th, 2031, which is the Feast of Dedication, when the Shekinah glory came into Solomon's temple and the smoke filled the temple, and God said, now you keep this as a Feast of Dedication. Jesus in the New Testament was on the Feast of Dedication on Solomon's porch in the temple. And of course, this was after he had the triumphal entry. And so we have the Feast of Dedication to the day, 1,335 days later, which of course would be the beginning of the millennial kingdom, the king, and the temple. It'd be a coronation day. What a day. Blessed is he who comes to that day. So we have trumpets, Passover, and dedication, 3 different feasts, 2 different feast dates to the day exactly. But wait, there's more. If you're to take this midpoint day, April 14th, and you're to go forward 1,260 days, you come to September 26, 2031, the exact date of the Feast of Atonement, which is a picture of the second coming of Christ. That's right, Armageddon, with 75 days later being the Feast of Dedication. So there's that period of time for the Battle of Armageddon, the cleaning up, the throwing Satan and judging those evil that were with him, and getting ready to set up for the kingdom. So of course we come back with Christ at this point in time. So now we have a 4th feast, and we have yet another day count, 1,260 days exactly. But wait, there's even more. Remember, we have to have all 4 day counts to make it work. If you go back to that midpoint, which is the crucifixion day, and you go forward 3 days to April 18th, which is the final day of the Passover feast, we call it the Feast of First Fruits in there. This would be Resurrection Day. And if you go backwards from that day, so these days would actually overlap by the time that Jesus was in the tomb. If they would overlap, you go back from that day, 1,260 days, and you land exactly on November 5th, 2024. Now, what's on November 5th, 2024? That's Election Day, USA. So Daniel was told to shut the book till the time of the end. He couldn't calculate it then, but we can calculate it now. Last year, we wouldn't have been looking at November 5th, would we? It's a mysterious number. It has to do with the mystery of iniquity that doth already work. Because on that day, the most important day for 200 nations of the world, for the Russia-Ukraine war, for the China-Taiwan conflict, for North Korea, for Iran, for the Temple Mount and what's going on with Israel. I mean, everyone is looking at this date. This will affect their economy, the U.S. government, the direction of the people, who that president is. And right now we know that might divide our own country. Between what's going on now and that point in time, we might not get to an election. We take it for granted, like as in the days of Noah. But what if there is a rapture? That would disrupt the world. What if the devil puts forth a lie that's just as disruptive? What if there's war up until that point and there's nuclear bombs or EMPs, and so there's communication difficulties, and that election day becomes almost an impossibility to take place? Well, our Constitution also says that our Senate, 100 members of our Senate, could meet and choose who that president's going to be. Or, I would say, crown that person who's going to be elected. So, on that day, we will have a covenant with many. This is what most people agree starts the 7-year tribulation period. Not necessarily the rapture. That has to happen. There has to be an apostasy first, and the man of sin has to be revealed before this thing takes place. And so a covenant with many could very much be an election, right? Or even an appointment by 100 senators. And so this would be the first seal of Revelation, where the white horse rider is given a crown and a bow and goes forth to conquer. And so we have November 5th, an election day, which is a mystery. The Bible doesn't say November 5th, but it lands us this year when you have 4 feasts and 3 day counts fit perfectly. The other day count points us to November the 5th, and I think that's significant. So folks, we have 4 feasts, 4 day counts, and the mystery of iniquity fitting exactly to the day according to this matrix. Now, if this isn't the right dates, and of course everything's falling in place, it certainly is the matrix for what God intended, and it's what we're looking for and anticipating. And so you take this information and do whatever you want with it. I'd love for you to communicate with us at BibleNation.org and tell us what you think. If you're a YouTube personality and you want to take this and use this on your prophecy channel or in some literature, feel free to do that. Just send someone to BibleNation.org and Dr. Doug Levesque, and so that they can communicate with us as well. Folks, thanks for listening today. Look up, your redemption draweth nigh. Remember, the best culture is a Bible culture. It's proven and it works. Hi, this is Doug Levesque. Thanks for watching the Bible Nation podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Go to our website, BibleNation.org, to check out all of our offerings. Thanks again for watching.